welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Kate Harper of the 61st District in Montgomery County. I believe one of state government's primary functions is to provide safe and efficient infrastructure. Moving people and goods quickly and affordably is vital to a thriving economy. So joining me today is Pennsylvania's Secretary of Transportation, Leslie Richards, and we'll be discussing funding sources for building and maintaining our roads and bridges, as well as giving an update on some of our bigger local projects. Secretary Richards, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we always start out by asking our guests to tell the audience a little bit about themselves. Now, I know you're local and you were a Montgomery County Commissioner, but tell us a little bit more. Where'd you grow up?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Bucks County, and I lived in Philadelphia for a little while, and most recently, for the last 25 years, I've lived in Montgomery County, more specifically White Marsh Township, so not far from your district.
Actually, where I grew up was White Marsh. And weren't you a supervisor there, or were you involved in local government?
It was. My very first experience in politics was as a local elected official as a White Marsh Township supervisor.
And from there you went to the county?
Correct. And prior to that, I'd worked in environmental engineering firms and civil engineering firms on transportation. So I feel very fortunate to be here in this position now, dealing with a topic I'm passionate about, which is transportation, and using both my public and private experience.
But you're not an engineer. Some transportation secretaries are engineers. You're a transportation planner?
Correct.
But you feel that background gives you a good start on your job?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, I have over 2 decades of transportation project experience. I've managed projects. And what I really specialize is in working with communities, our host communities where our projects are located. And it's so very important. As you know, everything is local. So it's important how you describe the project, how you demonstrate the need for the project, and of course, once the project begins, all the detouring and all the construction that takes place, making sure that everybody is aware of what's going on and the gains and benefits they'll have once the project is complete.
Well, let's talk a little bit about a big picture item, a big ticket item, and a long range item, which is Route 202. Mm-hmm. I have to tell you, the section between Route 63 in Montgomery, Upper Gwinnett and Lower Gwinnett Townships and 611 at Doylestown is a beautiful road. And one of the few brand new roads built anywhere in the Commonwealth in the last 20 years. And people do compliment me on it, so I'm happy about that. But I know people want to know what's going on with the rest of it. The road goes like an hourglass through Lower Gwinnett, and there's an intersection at 73 and 202 in Whitpain that people complain about constantly. What can you tell us about the long-range plan for Route 202?
Well, sure. First of all, there are certain projects that really make a career. And I've been working on 202 my entire career. I facilitated some of the earliest public involvement meetings, particularly for those residents who back up right on the bike trail, which I think is one of the crowning jewels of that project.
It's very well used.
I've never been on that stretch of roadway without seeing multiple bikes, and that's a really good sign. It's a long-term project, as most large projects are, and we'll be seeing construction on 202 definitely throughout my lifetime moving forward, but that's a good sign. It's because legislators like you in 2013, in a very bipartisan effort, passed Act 89, which is allowing us to put forward construction projects that have been on hold for a long time. Construction projects that are very important, like the 202 project. This year alone, we'll be awarding $2.4 billion worth of projects, and a lot of that is going to allow the design and construction to go through on 202. As you know, we just completed the part that you just mentioned, and we also completed parts that go through Norristown, Markley Street, and 202. I'm very familiar with the 73-202 intersection. I drive by it on a weekly basis, if not
a weekly basis. It's backed up on a daily basis, I can tell you that.
I am sure it is. As we mentioned before, my sister lives near that intersection, my mother lives near that intersection, and so I'm on it quite often, and I know the backups are quite problematic in all directions, whether you're on 73 or whether you're on 202.
So there are plans to improve it?
So those are the designs that are going forward, and again, because of a lot of leaders like yourself who have put Act 89 forward, it is now in our TIP, and it is in our 12-year plan. You know, as soon as we finish some of the other sections, we'll be moving toward that, and we'll obviously keep you updated as we can get the dates. They have not been set yet, but as soon as they are and move forward, we'll make sure you're one of the first to know.
Well, I know Whippen Township's very hot on this and has been very supportive of helping PennDOT find rights of way and other things so that the project happens. One thing that's a little confusing to people is that the road's not being done in order. In other words, stretches in Chester County are done,
Right.
and Norristown is done, and a piece of Lower Gwinnett is done, but in the middle, we're not done. So why is that?
In transportation, we can't always move in a linear way. There's other things that impact a project that people may not be aware of. As you can imagine, and I'm sure you're familiar with flooding issues and stormwater issues in Whitpain Township, as well as the areas surrounding where we live. And so there's some environmental issues, and we have to make sure that we have all the stormwater taken care of in the appropriate ways, and that is kind of backing this section up a little bit. But I'm optimistic. The local elected officials as well as the staff in Whitpen have been fantastic to work with. We're all on the same page. We're working with the Conservation District as well, putting all our ideas, trying to figure out alongside with DEP how we can best manage the stormwater. We don't want anybody to be in a worse case scenario than they are now, and in many places we want improvement. We want better drainage, and we want to make sure that flooding is not an issue. And so we're working through those engineering issues right now, and as soon as we have them all worked out, we'll be able to continue with that project. And that's why I can't give you a specific date right now, because all of those behind the scenes, it looks like we're not doing anything right now, but we're actually very actively working on that project.
Well, I'm sure people would be happy to hear that. Also, I mean, to be fair, many sections of 202 were built without any stormwater management at all.
Yes, and so we're correcting that as well. Where there weren't inlets, where there wasn't drainage at all, we're putting in that drainage. So we're going to end up with a much better road when you look at it in terms of stormwater, not just in terms of traffic flow and in terms of safety, less crashes, less severe crashes because of the design, but we're also going to look at improvements as far as stormwater is concerned.
Now, I know you're also interested in multimodal transportation, and I know that most of my viewers probably have no idea what multimodal means. So you're the transportation planner. Explain it.
Sure. Well, thanks for asking. You know, look, everybody associates roads and bridges with PennDOT, but what not everyone understands is we also help out with our ports, our waterways, our rail, passenger as well as freight, and our airports, of which we have over 100 local airports throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so we're helping, as far as transit agencies, we're helping certain transit agencies consolidate right now, saving their administration costs so that they can invest where they need in their capital programs and making sure lines stay in business, maybe adding frequency and length where needed.
For rail lines?
For bus routes as well.
Routes?
Yeah, bus routes as well as rail lines. And so, you know, it's been hugely successful where transit agencies, and when I say transit, I mean rail as well as bus, and where they're able to really take a look at their capital programs. And again, because of Act 89, which allowed money to go to multimodal reasons, which we never had before, it's really giving them flexibility that they need.
Well, I have to say that many people don't realize this in the burbs. If they've lived there for a long time, 40 years or so, the population's about doubled, and now the average commuter in Montgomery County, at least, is commuting from one suburb to another. And that has really stressed the roads and the transportation system.
Right.
What's the solution to that?
Look, we're looking at all different innovative ways. One of the things, believe it or not, that we're looking at is autonomous technology and connected vehicles.
You mean cars that drive themselves?
Self-driving cars. Now that
possibly
could mean
do a worse job than some drivers out there. Okay.
the technology is coming. Look, we all know that there are some cars now that pretty much park themselves, and a cruise control, for example. You know, you can.
It's amazing to see somebody do a parallel parking, which my mother taught me at great time and expense to herself.
Right.
To see a car parallel park itself is amazing.
Right. So we're working with Google. We're working with several car companies. We're working with a lot of the universities here in Pennsylvania as well in pushing that technology forward. Now, we're not going to snap our fingers and all of a sudden see autonomous vehicles everywhere, but it is going to give us some flexibility.
Well, I'm a little bit worried about it. I do serve on the Transportation Committee, and we are actually looking at legislation that would permit autonomous vehicles. I guess the worry is that trucks, big, heavy trucks without drivers will be driving around by themselves and there'll be accidents. I mean, what's the solution to that?
All of the data has shown that autonomous technology will get us into a safer time period in transportation. Accidents, fender benders, a sudden stop if you see a pedestrian or someone going across, much faster than a human reflex. Not that there aren't a lot of kinks that still need to be worked out. And so the legislation that's being worked on now will help us road test and foresee all the different situations, and so that we can work through them before this technology becomes in the main, part of the mainstream. And it's very exciting. Pennsylvania is on the forefront. We're one of the leaders in this new technology, and we're really excited to help move this forward. As we know, just like with the internet and other things, it's going to move forward without us, whether we're part of it or not. But I really do think, especially for seniors, for those who mobility is a challenge, the disabled community, this type of technology
it's totally a challenge for aging in the burbs, to be fair.
Yes.
You know? And have to have a driver's license or a driver.
Exactly. And so the other issue that we're dealing with right now that is also new is ride sharing. Companies like Uber and Lyft in our area, it's really allowed, again, people where mobility is a challenge to be mobile and not have to count on somebody always driving them. At their, touch of their phone, they can call a driver. And in the suburbs, that's always been a challenge. I know for myself, even getting to the airport was always a problem. Now I don't even have to plan ahead. And 10 minutes before I need the car, I can just send it out on my app and there's a driver in front of my house. And so that's something the suburbs never had. When you're in an urban, or if you're in Philadelphia, you have a lot of taxis, but not in the suburbs. And so we've been meeting with these ride-sharing companies, not only to help with suburbs, but also in rural areas. Seniors have a very hard time getting medical transportation, and we're working with them right now to see if we can help solve and improve that issue.
So those are all good things. A little scary, but good things. Let's talk about something closer to home. I serve on the Greater Valley Forge Transportation Management Association, and we've been looking at extending the rail line that comes up from 69th Street, I think, in Philadelphia to Norristown out towards the mall.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that project?
Very, very familiar. So prior to being in this role, I was on the Norristown, I was on the SEPTA board. And so we were looking at the Norristown high-speed line. And again, Act 89 allowed us to take a good look at some capacity-adding projects, and this is one of the ones that's gotten a lot of attention. It'll be huge. As we know, King of Prussia is one of the largest economic development issues. It's very high, I should say activity centers. It's very high, that's what I meant.
Yes.
And so a lot of people need to get there to work. And a lot of people need to get in and out of King of Prussia.
Amazingly, there's a reverse commute going on. People coming from the city to work either at the mall or the business parks that surround the mall in King of Prussia, Upper Merion Township.
Yeah, and there's a lot of development going on there right now. What I like to see as a planner, there's a lot of residential coming in, which is really nice, which means people will be living in that area as well. Different amenities will come in. The commute times won't just be 9 to 5, which will help and spread that out. But all the data also shows that ridership increases when we can extend that line. So right now I sit on the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, and we are taking a look at it because our right-of-way at the Turnpike is needed to extend this line.
And you have it. And you have right-of-way in the area.
There is right-of-way there. Obviously, as a county commissioner, I was very active in getting that line extended, and now as PennDot Secretary, I'm also very active. It's a line that I think is really needed and will be a huge boost to the region.
I know it is a concern to the people who live closest to the planned route, but at the same time, I can't help but think that it's about time.
I think it is going to show such an increase in use and taking cars off the road, which will be a huge benefit to people who live in that area. If you can depend on reliable and frequent public transit in that area, 202 will be less congested, and that's going to follow all the way, through Whitpin and other areas as well, through to Doylestown, as well as in the other directions. So the more cars we can take off the road, the better for the entire region.
Yeah, the average suburbanite's in favor of taking other people off the road so that they can just drive. So hold that thought. We're going to come back and talk about the Turnpike, which is a big project in my district at this time. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
Did you know that Act 16 of 1999 honors one of the greatest leaders in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives? The Matthew J. Ryan Legislative Office Building, once known as the Capitol Annex, is located next to the main Capitol building and honors the late Speaker of the House, Matthew J. Ryan. Those who visit this building will observe the magnificent architectural designs providing eloquence and grandeur to the building. Known as one of the greatest members in the history of the Pennsylvania State House, Matthew Ryan started his career in the legislature in 1963 and was elected Speaker in 1981. His charisma and knowledge will forever be reflected in the building now named after this great legislative leader. Now you know.
Did you know that Violet Oakley was the first female artist to receive a large commission for artwork done in a United States Capitol building? In 1902, Joseph Houston, designer and architect for the 3rd Harrisburg Capitol building, commissioned Violet Oakley to paint murals for the governor's reception room. He believed that Oakley's contribution would add interest to the building and act as an encouragement of women of the state. Prior to beginning her work for the Capitol, Oakley set out to England to conduct research for her murals. Upon return, she decided to center her artwork on William Penn and the founding of Pennsylvania. Oakley made sure that Penn's ideals of justice and peace could be seen throughout her work. In 1906, she completed 13 murals titled The Founding of the State of Liberty Spiritual and was placed in sequential order around the governor's reception room. These murals were some of the first to be installed in the Capitol. When Edwin Austin Abbey, another artist for the Capitol, died in 1911, Oakley was offered another opportunity to create murals for the unfinished Senate and Supreme Court chambers. Her work on the Senate murals, including International Understanding, was completed by 1919. Oakley then completed the Supreme Court murals, including the Divine Law, by 1927. Oakley is said to be the principal artist for the Capitol, with a total of 43 murals on display. She remains one of the greatest muralists in the United States. Now you know.
Welcome back to the program. I'm State Representative Kate Harper, and I'm discussing transportation with my guest, Transportation Secretary Leslie Richards, who still lives in White Marsh and commutes to Harrisburg for her job running the entire state's transportation system. So we were talking about the fact that in your job as Secretary of Transportation, you also sit on the Turnpike Commission.
I do. There's 5 members on the Turnpike Commission, and I'm one of them.
All right. So the Turnpike, especially the Northeast Extension, is huge in my district. And it's been under construction for as long as anyone can remember. So what's the deal? What are we doing with the Northeast Extension?
We're widening it to add lanes. We see that people are going in the northeast direction more and more. There have been some backups. I personally head up to the Poconos every weekend that I can during the summer. And so as people also make their way up to northeastern Pennsylvania, that was one of the areas that really showed again economic revenue generation for the Turnpike. And so we're trying to widen that area.
Well, I can tell you it's not just people going to the Poconos. Something like 60,000 people a day use it to commute.
That's true, and it's very true in the Lansdale area, in the Quakertown area,
right,
and the northeast direction. It's definitely true in the Willow Grove Interchange, Fort Washington Interchange, and Valley Forge Interchange. And we see that when we look at the data. People use the Turnpike in the southeastern part of Pennsylvania very differently than they use it out in the west, where the exits are much further apart. And so we're taking a look at that, and we're trying to look at our capital plan and see how we can make that easier for those of us who live in southeastern Pennsylvania. I always say we really know what traffic is. Sometimes I go out to other parts of Pennsylvania, and they tell me about traffic, and I'm sitting in it, and I just think, let me bring you back to southeastern Pennsylvania, and we'll show you what traffic is.
Stop by King of Prussia or Plymouth meeting at about, 5:30 in the afternoon?
Yes.
So speaking of that, I have noticed that the Turnpike really functions like a beltway, that it's a commuter road from Willow Grove to King of Prussia and a little bit beyond if you want to go down
to Malvern.
To Malvern, exactly. And so people are on it at rush hour, And that the Northeast Extension also is sort of a commuter road the same way. People buy houses in, near the interchange at Quakertown or Lansdale, and they might work down the Blue Route even.
Right.
So I love that thing you have that goes across, so the easy pass, you don't even have to stop. I mean, I think that's great. But I have noticed that every afternoon, and I'll put my plug in here now, between King of Prussia and Willow Grove, it backs up from what's called Norristown, which is really the Plymouth Meeting interchange, all the way to Willow Grove. Are there any plans to widen that stretch? I know it's widened already, but it seems as though it could use a little more help.
We do, and when I was a county commissioner, we did a very detailed study of every single interchange that currently exists in Montgomery County, as well as recommendations for new interchanges. And so we're taking a look at that plan right now. We just recently passed a capital budget, and we're moving forward on some new interchange designs, as well as seeing where we can put what we would term as slip ramps on and off into some of the industrial business parks, getting sure that people can get to and from those business parks, which also need a little boost right now.
Yes,
they're
they
aging out.
do.
And so we're looking, again, around the Willow Grove area, around the Fort Washington area, around the Valley Forge area. And then
What about Lafayette Street, the ramp into Norristown? Is that coming?
there's going to be an exciting announcement within this summer on that issue, yes.
Okay, good, because that's important for Norristown to recover, I think. All right, so let's talk about some other things that have been happening statewide. With the money from Act 89, I saw that you did something called bridge bundling. What's that? Bundling?
Well, look, up until just this past year, Pennsylvania had the not
Worst
to brag
bridges.
about title of worst bridges, worst number, highest number of structurally deficient bridges in the entire country.
Right.
I'm very pleased to say we're now number 2. And my friend Paul Trambino, the Secretary of the DOT in Iowa, now is number 1.
Okay.
So we're moving that number down. Look, we just went below 3,800, which still sounds like a lot.
3,800 deficient
Structurally
bridges.
deficient bridges.
Bridges that people shouldn't be driving on.
Bridges that might be posted at a reduced weight limit.
We
It's
actually
not-
have one of them on 202.
Yeah, so when you see a weight limit, that's a structurally deficient bridge. It was probably designed for a heavier load, but because of safety issues, we've seen that it has to be reduced. And I just want your viewers to know, if there's a reduced weight limit, it does not mean it's unsafe. Trust me, our engineers have been out there, they've inspected it, and we are fully confident that any car under, say, 6 tons, 3 tons, whatever the limit is,
But what does
can
a car
travel
usually
safely.
weigh?
Much less than that. That's
Okay,
more
that's
the
what I
weight of
thought.
a school bus.
Sure.
And we want to make sure, obviously, that our school children are safe and certain trucks that go over are safe. If there's a bridge that's not safe, it gets closed. And we inspect them on a regular basis. We normally inspect every other year. Once something gets termed either as structurally deficient or close to structurally deficient, we then inspect them in a much shorter time frame, say every 6 months. So we're on top of it. If there's a bridge out there, we make sure that it's safe to cross. That's not to say that a lot of bridge work needs to be done to keep those bridges open. And so that 3,800 number, as we get down further and further, while it is at an all-time low, it's still a lot of bridges throughout the Commonwealth.
So what is this bridge bundling I read about?
Sure. So again, the legislature gave us a great tool in Act 88, which is our P3 program, public-private
partnerships.
Right. And so with the P3 program, we've been able to have an aggressive rapid bridge replacement program where we are replacing 558 bridges in less than 4 years. And these bridges are located throughout Pennsylvania. It is the most aggressive bridge bundling program in the entire country. A lot of eyes are watching and seeing how we're doing it. It's also a very innovative funding scheme. And by using the P3 tools and working with the private sector, we're going to get more bridges done than has ever been replaced and rehabbed before.
But this would be for I don't know what you call it, generic garden variety bridge, something you
There are
couldn't.
simpler.
This is not the Ben Franklin Bridge
No,
or the
no,
Walt
no, no,
Whitman.
no.
Not,
These
not
are
that kind of bridge.
These are bridges over 20 feet long, which is how we measure. A bridge under 20 feet long is one category. Over 20 feet long is the other. But these are simpler bridges, and the ones that don't have such complex utility right-of-way issues as well as environmental impact issues, bridges that we know we can put on an aggressive schedule, and so that we can get them done, get them fixed, keep them open. We have a longer lifespan on these bridges as well, high quality, and so we'll see a lot of less detours in our local communities because of it.
All right, now here's another thing that we haven't talked about, the 70-mile-per-hour speed limit on the Turnpike.
Yes.
Okay, I love it, but I mean, what was the thinking behind that?
Most roadways have been designed at a 70-mile-per-hour requirement, and so a lot of our roadways can handle it. And so
Absolutely, the Turnpike can.
As you know, the Turnpike is a perfect example. It's
flat,
straight. There's not a lot of sharp turns involved. The sight lines are good. Pennsylvania is not that hilly, and so it's not like you can't see over a hill or anything. And so it's very safe. So we took a study throughout the entire Commonwealth on roadways where it made sense. Obviously, the Turnpike was one of those roadways, and we've extended from 65 miles per hour, and we've increased it to 70 miles per hour on hundreds of miles of roadway throughout the Commonwealth, and we've heard very good feedback because of it.
Now, if you would just stop having construction zones every other mile, we could actually get to 70 and stay there to get to Harrisburg.
Well, once those construction projects are complete, obviously we'll be able to stay at 70 miles per hour longer than that. I just have to remind viewers again, 55 miles per hour in a construction zone. We have to keep our employees safe, obviously, as well as everyone traveling through.
We do, and the penalties for going above 55 in a work zone are substantial. Nobody wants to go there, so we don't want to do that. Now, in the few minutes, just a couple minutes we have remaining, what do you think is the biggest challenge coming at Pennsylvania from a transportation point of view in the next decade?
Look, it's the same, I think, at any PennDOT secretary would say to you that sat in the seat, and it's always a funding issue, no matter what. We could have as many tools as possible, and just to give you an idea, right now, we have $6 billion worth of projects lined up, ready to go.
And how much money do we have?
We will have $2.5 billion to use for construction, and we need money to maintain these roads as well. And bridges. And it's not just roads and bridges.
People complain. I mean, I voted for the gas tax. I thought it was the right thing to do because I didn't want a bridge to collapse and hurt somebody or kill them. But they tell me, look, in Jersey it's cheaper and they even pump your gas, Kate.
Right. They don't have, look, in Pennsylvania, the big picture, we have 44,000 miles of state roadways that we're in charge of. That's not to mention 78,000 of local roads that need to be taken care of. We have 25,000 bridges, state-owned, that need to be taken care of. Again, that's not even mentioning the locally owned bridges. We have a lot of assets here that we have to take care of. So it takes money to take care of those assets. And also on the transit side, we're looking at improving rail service from Harrisburg to Pittsburgh, from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. That alone was estimated at $30 billion.
$30 billion. That would be one state budget.
Exactly. Obviously,
nothing else for an entire year.
It's not feasible in terms of cost, but we have to look at little things that we can chip away with and how we can improve. So, we'll never have enough money to do everything that we need to do, but again, thanks to the legislature here, they've given us more than we've ever had before, and I have 101 ways to use it.
Well, I'm sure you do. I do want to make mention of the fact, if our viewers don't know, that Pennsylvania constitutionally keeps gas tax money for roads and bridge and transportation projects. That's important so people don't think it's being wasted somewhere else. But that's all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Kate Harper. If you need assistance with any state government matter or you want to talk about transportation some more, feel free to contact me at my local office. The address and number will be shown in just one moment. Thanks for watching.